This is an SM Media production.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the debut episode of Up Go the Heads, SM Media's exclusive Scottish football podcast. I am Scott McPike. It is a pleasure to be your host on our debut episode. It's a bit of a different feel from the old Scottish football show. We're going to have different guests every week. We're going to have a bit of a different feel, different look for the new season. It's going to be a really intriguing season. We've got an all-star team to go through our season preview. The Premiership, Championship, League One, League Two, all kick off this weekend. And we have brought an all-star team in to talk about the upcoming campaign. We're going to make our predictions. We're going to discuss all the big talking points that have happened over the summer and basically just look at who finishes where come May. So let's go round the panel. First of all, he was my guest on the transfer show a few weeks ago. He's a man who's been on the show regular, was on the show last year when we did our season predictions. Didn't get many right. He got Aberdeen in third though, but I don't think many people saw that coming in December. It's a pleasure as always to welcome onto the show Lewis Anderson.
Thanks very much, Scott. Yeah, another season around. As you said, my predictions last year weren't brilliant, but fingers crossed we can get a few right this time round.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's delighted to welcome our resident Hearts fan. It's unknown if he's the head coach, the technical director, or what, but it's a pleasure as always to welcome onto the show Graeme Duthie.
Thank you, mate. Glad to be back. I'll answer to anything, to be honest. I'm that kind of guy.
Yeah. I mean, one thing is we'll give you media training. We won't let you go in an interview unprepared. And it's a pleasure to welcome in his first appearance on the show. I'm at a face you might see a lot during the course of the season. He's going to be producing 10 signings over the summer that have caught the eye tomorrow on the channel. It's a pleasure to welcome Kian Watt.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to get started.
It's good. It's going to be an intriguing season as always. I don't think, Lewis, in my whole time covering Scottish football, that I've seen as many headline signings. Like obviously, a lot of teams have been busy. We'll talk about managerial changes and things like that, but it's been non-stop over the summer. There's not been a minute's peace. It's been one story after another. It's been very, very busy.
Yeah, it's been really exciting, especially from a Rangers point of view. I think the fans knew that there was going to be a huge turnover of players at Ibrox this summer, and that's turned out to be the case. I think the players they've brought in, obviously still to move a few out before the end of the transfer window, but I think the guys they brought in will excite the supporters over time. I think the likes of Danilo and Cyril Dessers in particular, two players who, once they're fully up to speed, up to full fitness, if they can kind of, Dessers in particular, if he can recapture the type of form he showed when he was in Holland a few years ago, then he could be a really shrewd signing. And Sam Lammers, who's probably been the kind of headliner, if you like, from a Rangers point of view this summer. Across the city, of course, Celtic busy as well, looking at the Korean market this time round, bringing in, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the names, but again, it'll be intriguing to see kind of where they fit into Brendan Rodgers' plans going forward. I think Celtic fans have yet to really see much of their new signings during pre-season, but it's certainly shaping up to be another really exciting season, and I think it'll be another really close title race this time around.
It certainly will, yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of twists and turns over the course of the season. Graeme, we'll have to come to yourself, obviously. But as we spoke about just at the top of the show when we were introducing you, it's been a bit of a weird season, kind of summer at Hearts. Obviously, we have 4 new signings. We'll get your thoughts on them later on. But a new kind of managerial double act, Dale Boy and Rodney of Scottish football, I think it's fair to say. Frankie McAvoy is the head coach. Stephen Naismith is the technical director. I don't know if Robbie Nielsen or Ann Budge are still involved, but I don't really know. It's really hard to figure out what's going on at Hearts at the moment. But all reports seem to suggest that Stephen Naismith, despite not having his licence and the relevant qualifications, is the man calling the shots.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. I mean, it's a bit of a Jack and Victor thing at the moment. I think fans of other clubs are loving this. And to be fair, if I wasn't a Hearts fan, I would find it quite funny as well. But I mean, I think it's basically the same thing as last season. Basically, Naismith will be in charge. Probably after the European games, to be honest. McAvoy's there as number 2. Although McAvoy did say that if there's any kind of, thing about who gets the last say, it's going to be him, which will be interesting because that's fine if we're winning, but if we're not, if you're going to take the blame, there has been a lot of frustration from Hearts fans. Basically, over the summer, there's been a lot of frustration about the fact that we haven't really signed a lot of folk. The pre-season friendlies haven't gone great, but to be honest, I couldn't care less about pre-season friendlies. About fitness in the end. I was at the Leeds game on Sunday. Positives and negatives for me. But we are starting to make signings now. We brought Frankie Kent in. Really pleased with that. Just before I came on the show earlier on, we signed a Japanese boy, Kyusuke Tagawa, who looks a really good player. I'm pleased with him. But I think the whole management thing is going to be really interesting. I've been very vocal when this happened at the start. I didn't want them in charge anyway. I think there was other managers out there that could take in charge. I think, yes, for the 7 games that they took over last season, performances were better. But the fact is, they only won 2 games out of the 7. It's not great, and they got the job anyway. So it'll be all about results. If they're winning, I'm going to back them 100%. There's no doubt about that. But if we start getting beat, I mean, this first game on Saturday is going to be huge against a St Johnstone team that, for me at the moment, looks in complete disarray. Getting hammered 4-0 by Stirling Albion. Nobody saw that coming. They've not signed very many players. They've got about 2 players in. It's not a lot. We have to start the season well. If we look at the fixtures, actually, it's not a bad start. We don't play Celtic or Rangers until about the 9th game in. Mm-hmm. We've got a really good run of fixtures before we play them. We've got to start picking up points early on, and we have to start getting away wins. Only won 3 league away games last season. That's not good enough. That needs to change. But I'm probably more excited for the season starting than I was a few weeks ago. Now we started to bring players in. We've still got 2 or 3 more signings to make, which I'm pleased about. We've got a guy called Kenny Vargas coming from Costa Rica. We need the right back in. Let's cover for Nathaniel Atkinson. But I'm more excited about the season starting than I was weeks ago. But that might change on Saturday at 5:45.
Mm-hmm. It certainly will. Kian, I'm going to put you in the spot here. I'll apologise in advance, but of the 12 teams in the Scottish Premiership this season, how many of their managers were manager this time last year?
Oh, I was just looking over the managers the other day as well. I think there's been a lot of changes though, so maybe go half, 6.
There's 5 in no particular order: Lee Johnson, Derek McInnes, David Martindale, Malky Mackay, and Stephen Robinson. That's 7 managers that have changed. Some of those sides have changed their manager more than once over the course of that period. So it shows you, to me, a lot of teams over last season had a lot of kind of issues that they needed to bed in. What I noticed last season is, though, and I know the guys will agree with me on this, a lot of guys being promoted from within. It wasn't a case of going out and recruiting managers like you saw, obviously. Stephen Naismith coming in from the B team, Stephen McLean getting the job, Stuart Kettlewell coming in from the academy. You've got a lot. Barry Robson's a perfect example as well. There's a lot of sides that are seeing talent in their own doorstep and bringing it in from the managerial thing. But we've also seen the negatives of that over the last year. We had Liam Fox, we had Stevie Hamill. It can work. Barry Robson done really well when he took over. He obviously led them to 3rd to Lewis's delight. But we also saw the kind of Stevie Hamill, Liam Fox side of it, where it was very, very difficult for those guys.
Yeah, it certainly was. Lee Johnson as well could be gone by this evening if Hibs get beat off the end.
3-0 up. 3-0 up at the moment.
Are they? Well, yeah, it was certainly an interesting season. A lot of managerial changes he touched on there. In some ways, I think it's a really positive thing. In others, I'm not so sure. I think certain clubs it's going to work for, and others who I don't think it will, in particular this season. We'll talk about them later on in the show. But an interesting one, yeah. Barry Robson's a brilliant example, as he touched on, Scott. What he's gone on to achieve during the second half of last season with Aberdeen was pretty good by his own right, and I've been really impressed with his recruitment this summer as well. I must say that the players they brought in will certainly excite fans. So it's going to be an interesting one this season.
We'll move on to our predictions now. We're going to just go around the panel for everybody's predictions. We'll get a wee brief minute to talk about each kind of why you've made your prediction, what you think is going to be, why you've went against a team, for example. Now, with this, obviously, I like at the end of the season putting people on the spot. So at the end of the season, we're going to get the exact same panel on, and we're going to just dissect our predictions and see who get the most right, who get the most wrong, and there might be a prize for the winner and a prize for the loser out of the four of us. In no particular order, we're going to kind of, I say, we're in a bit of an order. We're going to look at the top flight, obviously the Premiership. I think we're all going to agree that first and second will be between two teams. We saw last year there was a 39-point gap between the top two to third place. I expect it to be not as high as that, but I do expect the two teams to be comfortably top. Don't know in what order. I'm going to put Kian in the spot first for that. Who is going to be first and who's going to be second? And give us your reasons for coming up with that.
Well, I think this one's a lot more tough to predict, simply because of both teams, Rangers and Celtic, having good windows. I think Rangers in particular brought in very promising players, and I think their squad's going to be a lot better than last year. They had a lot of players that had been there a while, so some fresh legs is good for them. But I have gone with Celtic first, and I think that's maybe more of a safe answer, because I was genuinely tempted when I was putting my list down to put Rangers, but I think Celtic will just nip ahead. I'm impressed with their new signings, Holm and Yang as well. So I think they've added to their squad and they've signed players that we haven't seen before, and that's just perfect. So yeah, I think Celtic will just beat Rangers, but narrowly though. I think it'll be closer than last year.
So you're going for Celtic first, Rangers second. We're delighted to welcome onto the show Jenna Thomson, our resident Motherwell fan. Jenna, it's a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Looking forward to this. Well, we had a lot of the guys talking about their thoughts of the season ahead. Obviously, a very confident Motherwell fan, I would imagine, getting into the season ahead. A brilliant end to the season last year, but there's a certain Dutch striker now no longer there. How difficult is he going to be to replace?
Oh, it's going to be incredibly hard to replace. I don't think we actually will ever be able to replace him. Yeah, players come and go, but a player of his calibre and his talent, there's no one like Van Veen. He is a diamond amongst the rough in terms of Motherwell players going by, and if we find someone half as good as him the next 10 years again, I'll be blown away.
Brilliant. We'll come to you next for your first and second. Who's going to win the league and who's going to be second?
I think it will be Celtic again this year. Their team's incredibly strong. They've got the new manager at the range. We've all seen, well, new with an asterisk next to, I suppose, but we've all seen the success Brendan Rodgers had with Celtic previously in the past, so I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be able to recreate that again this season. Rangers, I think there will be a thorn in the side. I don't think it will be like last year where the league was decided quite early on. I think it will be much more drawn out, and I think it may even come down to the last or even the second last Old Firm.
So 2 votes for Celtic so far. Graeme, will come to you next. Who you got? Who's going to be walking away champions and who's going to be the runners-up?
Yeah, sorry, Scott, but I'm going Celtic as well. I just think they are still looking quite strong. You know, I think they've signed quite well. I do think it'll be very tight this season. I think Rangers have done very well. I think Danilo could be a really good signing as well. I think Jack Butland could be a very good signing as well in goals to replace Alan McGregor, who is, you know, we know how good a goalkeeper he is. I think it'll be interesting to see how all the new players at Rangers and Celtic settle in. But I just think Celtic have that kind of winning mentality about them. And I think you've still got a guy like Callum McGregor in there who knows what winning is like. I think Brendan Rodgers will probably win it again, but I do think it'll be a lot tighter this season. I don't think they're on away with that. I think it might be the last few games, but I do still think Celtic will win it.
The 3 votes for Celtic. Lewis, come to you next. Who you got?
Celtic's got
4 votes for Celtic. Very interesting.
It's an interesting one. I mean, there's been that much change at Rangers this summer. Michael Beale's openly admitted that he's still expecting teething problems during the first couple of weeks of the season. It's unlikely to me at this stage that he'll know his strongest starting 11. I know he's kind of chopped and changed various formations and personnel during pre-season. Some have worked, some others in particular haven't. I think defensively is still a big issue. The full-back areas, the left-hand side, I'm not convinced by either. I think Barisic's time at the club's up. To be honest, I'd be looking to cash in on him this summer. And Yilmaz hasn't struck me as he hasn't convinced me at all since he walked in the door, really. So I still think they need a bit of work in that area of the pitch. They're still, of course, actively trying to look at getting in a left-sided centre-back, whether that be Panzo or Trusty. I know they've been linked with him earlier in the window. But, you know, the demand is there from the fans. They'll be expecting them to kind of come out all guns blazing this weekend, put on a show. They've just signed Jose Cifuentes this evening. A lot of that's been a really protracted deal. I think there'll be pressure on his shoulders from the outset to prove that he's very much been worth the wait. We'll find out a lot about this Rangers team over the next couple of weeks, how they start this season. I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions. In terms of Celtic, I think I agree with what Graeme was saying there. I think they've just got that winning mentality. Perhaps have looked a bit sluggish at times in pre-season by their own standards, but again, that's just what you expect at this time of the season. And I think, given time, I think as Kian previously mentioned, I think it'll be a lot tighter this year. I really do. But yeah, Celtic narrowly for me.
So we've got four votes for Celtic, and I'm going to have my say. I do find this interesting because I do think getting Brendan Rodgers back is a masterstroke. Like, I do think when the kind of managerial candidates were coming up, when his name was mentioned, I was the back of my head going, that would make a lot of sense. That would be the right appointment. But I was also thinking, he's left Leicester. I don't think he'll come back into football that quickly. So to get him back, I don't think it's much of a dip in terms of from Postecoglou, because I think it will be the same level of performance. I think having a lot of those players, I'm going to sound stupid here, but I don't think Jota is a massive miss. And he's a miss, obviously, in terms of as a performer. But when you look at the way the squad gels, Abada comes straight in. Do you know what I mean? Abada replaces him. And can you make the case that Celtic have dropped in any way? I don't think you can. I think Celtic are in a really good position. They've obviously added really well, as we'll get into later. I think they've made some terrific signings. Rangers, it's going to take time now. I know the pressure's going to be on Michael Beale to deliver trophies. It's been another season without a trophy. I do think Beale deserves a lot of credit for the way he came in, and instantly they went on a run. I think was it 16 games? I think they didn't lose before they went to Parkhead. So the big difference was that Beale came in and he got a tune domestically. Now, Europe was a disaster last season for Rangers, but in terms of the league, they did close the gap. They were getting runs together. It needs to. They've identified the place where I thought they struggled last season, which was in forward areas. That was the reason Celtic won a treble. Rangers didn't have enough killer instinct to knock them off their perch in terms of the three games. The three games I look back on, the semi-final where Celtic just their one chance they scored, because Rangers were the better team that day and Celtic took their one chance. The cup final, Kyogo, the difference maker, we'll go on to him later on. I love him to bit. I think he's the best player. I think he's the best player Scottish football's had in, I would say, at least 10 years. And I think the 3-2 game where Rangers made a lot of mistakes, and I don't think that will change this season. They need to sort the left side of defence. I'm coming to an answer. I think it will. I think Celtic will just edge it. I think Celtic will just edge it, but I do think Rangers will get a lot closer. I think it will be very, very tight. I can see it being a final day thing. I said that last season and I was wrong very quickly. I can see Rangers, once they gel, I think Rangers will be very, very good. But I do think Celtics get the edge. I think Celtic will just edge it this season. So 5 votes for Celtic. Rangers in second. Let's go to third place. Who's going to give Lewis Anderson a second straight win in this department? Are you going with the same team you did last year?
I am indeed, Scott. Yeah. I think they've got the strongest squad on paper out with the Old Firm at this moment in time. I really do. As I mentioned earlier, really impressed with the players Robson's brought in. I think bringing back Clayton Clarkson on a 3-year deal was a masterstroke. I'm really impressed with Rhys Williams as well. Watched him a couple of times in Liverpool's academy. I know he's very highly rated, so excited to see how he gets on. And there's talk as well that they've got this left back coming in from Central Coast Mariners as well, James McGarry. So, yeah, I think it's an exciting one. And the big thing for Aberdeen has been that they've managed to retain Duke Miofsky. I thought there would be interest in them this summer, and that they've managed at this stage to keep them on board. So I think they're in a really strong position. Obviously, built up a bit of momentum towards the end of last season, and that kind of feel-good factor seems to be back in and around the northeast now. So, I think. I personally think it'll be between them and Hearts. I think it'll be a straight shootout. I don't think Hibs are anywhere near involved in the race for third this year. Aberdeen for me just have the edge.
Aberdeen third. Graeme, where are you going? Are you sticking with your beloved Hearts, or do you see Aberdeen doing it again?
Before I answer that, can I ask Lewis a quick question? Do you think that European group stage football might affect Aberdeen? Because it affected Hearts at times last season.
It's an interesting one, Graeme, isn't it? Because I think Aberdeen, it's a difficult one to call. I mean, under Derek McInnes, you know, they fared relatively okay, but you know, it is always the case, isn't it, when it comes to European football, that normally, more often than not, it affects their league form at some stage of the season. If that were to happen, I think for Aberdeen it would be before Christmas at this rate. But I don't know. I think they're in a strong position. Oh, look, I think a lot depends on who they draw as well. You know, you've got to factor in there's a lot of travelling involved in Europe, whether that they're playing teams in, you know, far east of Europe. You've got to factor all that in as well. I don't know. It'll be a difficult one to call.
Yeah, I mean, it won't surprise you, but I'm going for Hearts because if I keep believing it, it might happen. You know, we basically threw it away last season. It was disappointing. Robbie made a lot of mistakes last season, but it wasn't all on him. I think the players let him down at times last season. As I said, I am impressed by what we've done so far. I think getting Frankie Kent in from Peterborough, really good signing. Callum Neuenhoff looks a really good player in midfield. I think the signing of Tagawa could be really good. Again, I mentioned him earlier, Kenny Vargas coming from Costa Rica could be really good. We also do have Benny Beningame to come back. We've got Liam Boyce coming back. We've still got Danny Mackay to come back. Mm-hmm. I think the squad is looking a lot better than it was a few weeks ago. And I think I said earlier on, a few weeks ago, Hearts fans were on Twitter, on Facebook, on different programmes raging about basically nothing was happening. It's a bit better now. So I do think that Hearts still have a very good squad there. I am intrigued to see what's going to happen with Stephen Naismith and Frankie McAvoy and if that partnership is going to work. I hope it does. But like I said, I think the fixtures where they've fallen and the fact that we don't play Celtic Rangers till late on in October should help us. So I do think we are going to finish third. It'll be difficult like it was last season. But I do just think that European fixtures that Aberdeen are going to have might have an effect. So I do think that Hearts will finish third, and I certainly hope we do.
Ian, who do you think is going to finish third?
Well, I've backed my own team. I've backed Aberdeen, but I do have concerns as a fan. Our signings have been really good, and I know Cormac recently put out a message on Twitter actually saying to the fans that more signings are coming. But I think squad depth is an issue for Aberdeen. Our first 11 is great. I think that's one of our best first 11s we've had in a long, long time. But there's a serious drop in quality from those players that are starting to players that are on the bench or just overall in the squad. So Miofsky and Duke keeping them is perfect. Bringing in Solclair, that's brilliant because now Duke and Miofsky will be watching their back. And then you have to think about our defence as well. McDonald's is just coming back from an injury. I think Rhys Williams is injured right now as well. So there's concerns there. Rubicic, who's been brought in, seems a good player, but no one really knows anything about him. And we're only a few injuries from starting Anthony Stewart. And we know how much of a disaster that was last season for Aberdeen. So, and then obviously we're losing Ramadani as well. So I'm listing a lot of negatives here, but I do genuinely think that first 11 is good enough to see us through. But I agree with Graeme there. Like the European games is going to be a big issue for Aberdeen, how they balance it. But I'm hopeful in the next month to see a lot more signings. And yeah, I do think Aberdeen will just about make it. I think it'll be very heavily contested though.
Brilliant. Jenna, who do you think will finish third?
Going for full house here, Aberdeen.
Aberdeen. Excellent. So, I think we'll be Aberdeen as well. I do think Hearts will improve. I do like what Graham's saying about I like the Frankie Kent signing when I heard that. I like the boy for Japan. Again, I'm noticing this summer a lot of signings from abroad. Last time there was a lot of that. It didn't really work out, but I think this time it will be different. I think Aberdeen have got a lot of depth, particularly in forward areas. Love the signing of Rubicic. I've heard a lot about him. Sokol looks a good signing as well. I think just that bit of depth behind Miovski, I don't think will do any harm. McCrory and Ramadani will be hard to replace, but I think with the likes of Shinnie coming back in, I think you might see one or two in that position to come in between now and the end of August. I think Aberdeen will have enough. And we'll move into fourth. I'll start with Jenna. Who do you think will finish fourth and why?
I've been debating this one. I feel like in preparation coming on here, or when actually sitting here. I'm not going to lie, I'm stuck between Hearts and Hibs. The more I think about it, the more I think Hearts, and then I'm like, oh, what about Hibs? Let me explain my insanity quite quick for you.
You can actually Hearts here, Jenna.
The thinking is, Hearts, we all know what happened with them last season. They absolutely fell to pieces, let's put it bluntly, okay? Things didn't go well. However, they have made a lot of impressive signings, as Graeme touched on. They do have players that are due to come back from injury that did unfortunately miss out the later parts of last season as well. That can make all the difference. What worries me about Hearts and like Aberdeen is the European games that they'll be playing in. Is that going to affect them negatively, or on the flip side, is getting an extra minute in the legs and make them perform even better potentially, because they're getting that little bit more experience compared to the rest of us that didn't make it. So that's why I'm stuck between them. I thought more so Hibs maybe, because they also make quite a few good signings as well. They've been really trying to strengthen their team. However, that result last week kind of swayed me towards more of the Maroon persuasion, but we'll see how it is. I was having a look there because it came up a note from Sky Sports on my phone that apparently Hibs are actually winning the now in that game against that same team. So we'll see how that goes at the end of the show. I might turn around, no, Hibs, but I think it'll be between those two overall.
Right, okay, so it's very much undecided between Hearts and Hibs. Kian, who's finishing fourth?
Well, my other three were pretty safe, so I went a bit bold with this. It probably won't be that popular either, but I went with Hibs.
Okay.
Kian, what you doing, man?
And I can't lie, I'm not impressed with the Hearts setup, but I think third and fourth, and then fifth even, that could just be like a few points separating them. So it still might be close, but Johan being permanent, I think he's a proper player as well. So yeah, and they send that new boy, Venti, I think, and he looks decent. I'm quite impressed with their starting 11 right now, but it might not be Lee Johnson that sees them to fourth, but I do think they'll be up there.
We'll touch on Lee Johnson later on. I certainly will. Graeme, fourth place. Who's finishing behind Hearts, in your opinion?
I now want to put Aberdeen last, but I won't be that bitter. No, I think Aberdeen will finish fourth. I do think they have signed very well. I think, for me, Aberdeen have signed a lot of good players, but I think for me, one of the biggest ones, actually two of the biggest ones, are they've managed to sign Graeme Shinnie long-term contract, and they've also kept Leighton Clarkson. I think he's a very good player. Now, I support Liverpool, so I've seen Leighton Clarkson a lot. He's a very, very good footballer. I think he's a really good signing for Aberdeen. And the fact they managed to get him permanent is really, really good business. I'm going to disagree slightly with Lewis on Reece Williams, because I've seen him a lot of times, and I've never been that impressed with Liverpool. He makes a lot of mistakes. He's a big laddie. He doesn't have a lot of pace. Listen, he is very raw, but I think he's not the best defender from what I've seen of him. But I think they have signed very well. But, I think the guys are right. Keeping Duke is massive. Really, really good. Fantastic player for Aberdeen. So I'm not going to be bitter. I am going to put them fourth. I think they will have a good season. But I just think that European games might have a massive effect on them for finishing third. So I'm going to put them fourth.
Okay, so Aberdeen fourth. Lewis, who you got in fourth?
Hearts for me, Scott. It's going to be an intriguing one. I'm really not convinced by this Hibs team at all. This when Kevin Nisbet left and they signed 36-year-old Adam Lafondra. I mean, The reaction to that from the fans was laughable. Did they genuinely think that they weren't going to go out and splash the cash on someone else? And I know they've spent the 700k on Venti, but Jesus, I don't like the direction Lee Johnson has taken Hibs. I like the signing of Dylan Levitt in particular. He's a top player. We saw that in a really poor team last season. But I just think Hearts have got a bit more strength, as you said, up front. If they can get Boyce firing on all cylinders, keep him fit, which is a big if. I think him and Shankland, we know the goals Shankland scored last season. I think it was at 24, Graeme, am I right in thinking? So
28 in total, 24 in the league, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think if they can get them both firing on all cylinders, I think it's a straight shootout between them and Aberdeen for third and fourth. And I think Hearts are fourth.
Yeah, I think Hearts the same. I can see the angle with Hibs to a degree, but I also worry with Hibs, despite having that. I think they've signed really well. I think Dylan Levitt could be one of the signings of the summer, but I just worry with Hibs is that Hibs is all well behind the scenes. I know the result. I saw that result and I saw the pressure Lee Johnson was getting, not just in Andorra, on social media. It was not good at all. And I think Lee Johnson's always going to suffer for that, because I think despite the brand of football he's trying to play, I don't think he's ever going to be well received with the Hib support. I just don't think that is ever going to be a match made in heaven. I think Hearts have got enough.
He's probably as well, Scott. I'm trying to think of the previous Hibs managers in terms of how well he's been backed.
Oh,
I'd say he's probably in recent times anyway. Yep. It's an interesting one, and I think his comments after the game in Andorra as well didn't, sit well at all with the fans, telling them to calm down and all this. We saw the footage; it was embarrassing. No getting away from it.
It was hilarious. I loved it.
But we've got the top four. We're going to move on to overachievers and underachievers. Now, what I mean by this was last year we did a thing. Which team that was maybe kind of bottom six last year didn't look as if they were ever going to break in? Which team could exceed expectations, and which team will be disappointing this season in terms of what's expected of them? I'm going to come to Kian for this first. Overachievers and underachievers. Who have you got?
Yes, for overachievers, I think Jenna will appreciate this, but I've gone with Motherwell.
Thank you.
Stuart Cattlewell. I think he's a great manager, to be honest, and I like their transfer window as well. I wrote that article the other day, in that new defensive midfielder, North Macedonia, who I won't try to pronounce because I'll absolutely butcher it, but he looks like a very, very good signing. So yeah, I've just gone with Motherwell, a bit of a random shout as well. And then for underachievers, I went with Hearts, and again, sorry.
Interesting.
But then I've listed my reasons before.
I can see the daggers from Graeme going towards you already, Kian.
well,
we're going to fall out, my man. We're going to fall out, son.
Good for Graeme. I also support Liverpool, so at least I've got that said.
Oh, that's all right then. I'll forgive you.
So Motherwell for Kian and for overachievers and underachievers. Hearts, Jenna. I have a funny feeling who your overachievers are going to be. I'm not sure who your underachievers.
Yeah, overachievers. Obviously, I had to put up Sells. The difference that Kettlewell has made since he came in January is mind blowing. The same groups of players this time, not even 6 months ago, maybe even 8 at a push. Completely different players from who they are today. It is honestly mind-boggling. If we don't get some sort of top 6 or even just a decent cup run overall this year, there'll be something seriously wrong.
Very interesting.
Dan Casey, Jenna. I think he, on paper, is one of the signings of the summer, given how well he was.
We've got him on a more permanent deal now is some of the best business that we have done in a long time. Him alongside Callum Butcher is one of the best defensive partnerships we've seen in a good while at Fir Park. We just need to get him squared up, get his leg better, and we'll be clear sailing this full Premiership.
Brilliant.
We'll win the full thing.
You've sold me, Jenna. Who you got as underachievers?
I've got a couple ones, this one, I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
I was thinking Hearts a little bit. I can see European football not going very well for them and that potentially affecting their league position as well. However, this one might be a bit of a surprise, I'm not sure. but I've been thinking a little bit St Mirren.
Okay.
My thinking with that one is they did quite well last season. It was one of their first ever top 6 seasons, God knows how long. They did really well. But with the limited resources that they've got now, things aren't too great financially. They're getting better, but still a bit shaky. It can easily go either way. I think they'll either have an absolute blunder and they'll finish maybe 9th, as low as that, or they'll turn things around and they might finish top 6 again. I think it'll go either way, but I'm leaning more towards the negative. I hope I'm wrong. I've got a bit of a soft spot for St Mirren because of Stephen Robinson and half the Motherwell team playing for them. But I think it can go either way.
Interesting. Lewis, your overachievers and underachievers.
Laugh me all you want. Overachievers, Dundee.
Ooh.
No one can back Dundee ever when it comes to on your coupon or whatever. The biggest yo-yo club in Scottish football. This year, I think, in terms of overachieving, they will not be involved in a relegation battle. I can see them going on a cup run. Really impressed with Tony Docherty as an assistant manager when he was with Derek McInnes, obviously trusted lieutenant for a long time. Intrigued to see how he goes as on his own. Really like the signings he's brought in, proper top flight caliber players like Joe Shaughnessy, and they brought in a Mexican striker as well. Intrigued to see if he's another Scottish football dud or if he can be make a real name for himself. So yeah, Dundee, I've been really impressed with them in pre-season as well. I know they beat a couple of lower league English teams. In terms of underachievers, Hibernian. For me, I just think destined to fail this year. I really do. I know you were talking about Lee Johnson being one of the first managers to get the sack last year. Scott, I think I just think.
I think we did. I think we did it, and Graham Alexander got the sack the next day, and somebody had picked him.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. I just really worry about Hibs. Losing Kevin Nisbet was inevitable, but I think it's going to take a lot to replace him. We don't know much about the boy Dylan Vente. They spent a lot of money on him, so they clearly got high hopes for him. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced by Hibs at all this season. I think they'll be doing well to get a top 6 finish in my view.
Big call, Graham. Who's your overachievers and underachievers?
Lewis is my favourite for saying that now. I think overachievers, and I'm surprised I'm saying this because I wasn't impressed with them last season. I think Kilmarnock, I think they've signed very well. I think bringing in Lewis Mayo, Stuart Finlay to solidify that defence is really, really good signings. Marley Watkins is a decent player. Matty Kennedy is a decent player. I think Kilmarnock could do all right this season. I don't think they'll get top 6, but I think they might finish 7th. I think they could do all right under Derek McInnes. So I think they, for me, are probably the overachievers for me, which I'm surprised I'm saying.
And your underachievers?
I'm going to say Livingston. And I think they've overachieved for the last few seasons, but they've not really signed a lot of players. They've only brought 4 in. And listen to David Martindale the other day where he's talking about the fact that he talked to 6 players and they couldn't financially get them in. I just think Livingston are going to struggle this season. You know, it is very difficult to attract players to Livingston. They have done well over the last few seasons. And I do like David Martindale, but I think this season they are really going to struggle.
Interesting. I am going to go for my overachievers as Motherwell. I think Motherwell will break into the top 6. Jenna, what I like about Motherwell's business this summer, I know we were talking about Van Veen early on in the show. They brought in Jonathan Obika. I think Wilkinson could be a good signing from Walsall. I also like the signing of Theo Bair, but the one that really catches my eye is Barrett from Arsenal under 21s. I think I've spoken to a couple of people that follow Arsenal. I think Lennon Miller could make a real impact as well. I think he stood out really a lot over the Viaplay Cup. And I just think Motherwell, in terms of attacking, I know Van Veen's goals are going to be hard to replace, Jenna, but I think Motherwell have a lot of options now in forward areas, which is going to help their depth.
Absolutely, and that was the main thing that fans were crying out for, because originally when it was just Obika that we had signed, we were like, right, we saw him last season, he did okay, but he was just okay. Mm-hmm. We need better, we need greatness, we need fire, we need energy, we need someone that'll get in about a defender's face and fire about 3 behind him. We need that type of energy, and now we might not have that in the form of one player anymore like we did last season, but the fact we do have likes of Mika, that boy Wilkinson, the guy from Arsenal that's just signed today. We've also likes of Spittle and Callum Slatten in the midfield, they're attacking midfielders. So if the strikers aren't pulling their weight, at least we know, well, we can rely on those two as well. We're going to be playing a lot more this season as an actual team rather than 10 players and Van Veen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Underachievers, I'm with Lewis. I think Hibs could underachieve and finish 5th. That's the thing. I just worry for Lee Johnson. Like, I really do. I know I was saying it this time last year. I just don't see how it blends. I've speak to a lot of Hibs fans and they all say the same thing. It's times it can be really good to watch. Yuan's been really good. Boyle coming back, I think, could be a big plus. But I just think they're capable of throwing in a howler from time to time, and a howling run could be on. They could blow you away at times, but I just worry for Lee Johnson. I'll be amazed if Lee Johnson is the manager of Hibs by Christmas. I'll be amazed if that's the case.
I don't think he will be.
I don't think he will be,
be
because I think Lewis's point is spot on. He's been back to the hill, and I don't think finishing 4th or challenging for 3rd is going to be enough. I think that they have to be a lot better than they are last season. That I thought at times they were really, really poor to watch. I thought at times I'm not convinced with their defence either. I know the boy Fish is really, really talented. I think midfield they're okay. Their defence does not catch my eye at all. I love Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson, but if they're your first choice options at this time, I think there's something wrong. Bushiri, I've never been convinced with at all. The goalkeeping situation, David Marshall's done. It pains me to say it, David Marshall's done. The boy Woolacott's just been taken off injured. Arthur Boric's cousin is now their goalkeeper. Lewis mentions about Adam Lafondra. I just think there's a lot of questions regarding Hibs, and I think Hibs could underachieve and finish 5th, but I think they could finish a big distance behind 3rd, which I think will be curtains for Lee Johnson. Let's move into the relegation places, 11th and 12th. Last year, obviously, we saw Dundee United being relegated again to the Championship. Ross County survived with the skin of their teeth in a penalty shootout. Lewis, who's 11th and who's 12th?
11th place is going to Livingston, very much with Graeme this season. This signing, this transfer window in particular, I think David Martindale's been very open about how he's gone after a lot of players, and very few of them have kind of he's managed to pull them off. It's what Graeme touched on. Very difficult to attract on one of the smallest budget, if not the smallest budget in the league. I think they're due a season down there, to be honest. They've done incredibly well to be where they have been over the last few years, and that's all credit to Martindale. He deserves all that, and obviously bringing in the players that guys like ourselves never really heard of, but have kind of really gone on to prove themselves. But I just think this year they really are set to struggle. And in terms of relegation this year, it's bye St Johnstone. Stephen McLean isn't going to last long at all. I didn't like the appointment in the first place. I know he's a St Johnstone legend, but I think a club like them need to be looking for someone more experienced. I would have revisited the Tommy Wright to see if he was keen to come back. I would have, they always. I understand why they have gone down this route, but look at the evidence in the Viaplay Cup. It was horrendous. A competition they won a few years ago. I was quite vocal about they should never have sacked Callum Davidson last season. When he did, I kind of really thought he would have turned the situation around. The result of the weekend there against Stirling Albion was just shambolic. I think for a manager like Stephen McLean, he's new to it. Obviously, he's striking out his first time. He needs to be doing his business as early as possible. Now, I know St Johnstone is difficult. Again, it's like Livingston, you always seem to struggle to sign players until maybe later in the transfer window. I like the addition of Luke Jeffcott. He's a decent player, and we've been around the English lower leagues for a long time. I just don't think they've got enough about them this season. And it was reflective two years ago there when they survived by the skin of their teeth. I think St Johnstone's time in the top flight is over.
Interesting. Graeme, 11th and 12th.
I'm in total agreement with Lewis. I've said already, I think Livingston are going to struggle. I think they'll be 11th. I just think they look a shadow of the team they were. As I say, I like David Martindale, but I just think not being able to attract players to the club is very difficult. And again, most of the time, they don't really have a massive fan base either. I like Livingston as a stadium, but they don't have a massive fan base. It's hard to attract players there. I think they could struggle for me. And I think 12th, I completely agree. St Johnstone are going down. And it feels crazy to say that, given a few years ago when they were winning the League Cup and the Scottish Cup, they were in Europe. But they've only signed 2 players. They've only signed Luke Jeffcott and a goalkeeper. It's not a lot. And that hammering by Stirling Albion is an absolute embarrassment. Watch them now beat Hearts 1-0 on Saturday, just to annoy me. But no, I think St Johnstone look a very, very poor side just now. They've not. Listen, there's still weeks to go in the transfer window, but you've got to then get the players in. They've got to gel. They've got to settle. I genuinely don't think Stephen McLean will even last the next few weeks. St Johnstone fans already are not happy, which I understand. I think St Johnstone are definitely going down this season.
Kian, 11th and 12th.
Well, I promise I'm not peeking over everyone's homework and copying, but I've gone the exact same. So yeah, Livingston. Well, David Martindale spent a lot of this summer talking about how much they're skint, basically, and they're not bringing in any real high caliber players. Yeah, I'm not impressed with their squad. I think they will struggle. I think it could honestly be the other way around. I went with St Johnstone 12th as well. So yeah, I think they're probably the most obvious when you look at it and you look at the cup and everything surrounding their summer and their signings. But yeah, Livingston and St Johnstone for me.
Interesting. Jenna, we've had 3 votes for Livingston in 11th and St Johnstone in 12th. Are you making it 4?
I'm making St Johnstone a 4th.
Okay.
But my gut instinct as well, just based on patterns, what we've seen before, was Dundee to be 11th. However, you kind of have to turn my cheek a little bit with your arguments for Livy. I didn't expect them to do well. I was thinking about 9th, 10th at the highest for them, don't get me wrong. But as you were all saying, they've struggled to attract players. Martindale's been talking non-stop over the summer about how their budget is next to 0. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Dundee just sneaks ahead of them and they end up finishing 11th and Dundee finishes 10th, but I think it will just be between those 3 to battle out at the bottom the full season.
Okay, interesting. We're unanimous in St Johnstone. I think as well, we spoke about this last season with Graham Alexander, and I'm sorry to keep bringing it up, Jenna. He was never ever going to survive. He was never ever going to survive that Sligo result, and I think it's going to be the same here. How many managers do we see? Pedro Caixinha didn't survive the Progress result. Graham Alexander, he didn't survive the Sligo result. St Johnstone should not be losing 4-0 at home to Stirling Albion. No matter how much respect I have for Darren Young, St Johnstone should not be losing that much at home to any team.
You could argue though, Goodwin did survive Darvel, only for a week, but he did survive it, to be fair.
Jim Goodwin's another example. I forgot all about that, and Darvel fans will hate me for that. But yeah, a perfect example. I think when you have that bad a result, you just can't survive, and there's already pressure on them. I don't think recruitment has been good at all. I don't think they were that good last season. I remember saying to a St Johnstone fan, I said, I think these are going down. And I still didn't disagree with that. I thought they obviously came to life just a wee bit at the end of the season, but expectations are not high with St Johnstone. I think St Johnstone are finishing 12th. 11th, I'm finding interesting. I've went for Dundee, but I know Lewis has got them as overachievers. I just think with Dundee, they are that type of club who just struggle. They won't be that. I don't think they were that good last year in the Championship. They had the quality to just go over the line. I don't think they were that good. I have a lot of respect for Tony Docherty, but I think it's a big job to go into in management. Your first task. I think there'll be a lot of pressure on him as well because of Dundee United going down, Dundee coming up. I think it will be very, very interesting to see what happens there. I think Ross County will be a team who will be a bit better this season. I think they've got a lot more striking options. I think their big problem last season was scoring goals. I think Simon Murray's had a bit of a game. Jordan White and Eamon Brophy could be good as well. Love the boy Danda as well. I've got him as a player to really watch this season. And I just think Dundee, I think Livingston will just have enough. I think keeping Bruce Anderson and Joel Newbley is very interesting. I think they'll just have enough. Always have faith that David Martindale was just going to pull out the bag, and I've tipped them to go down the past 4 years. I'm going to reverse it. I think they'll be all right this season. I think Livingston will be okay. Let's move on to the player awards. Let's start with the player of the year. Who is going to be taking home the plaudits at the end of May? Let's start with Graeme.
Clearly, Lauren Shanklin. Of course he is. No, do you know what? I think probably again, it'll probably be Kyogo, which is going to be a boring answer, but I just think he was sensational last season. And I don't see any reason that he's going to change. I think he'll still score a lot of goals. I think he will be definitely in contention. The one thing I actually wanted to ask you guys about as well before I say anything else, I was thinking earlier on, having listened to a couple of podcasts earlier on, the Saudi transfer market doesn't close for another couple of months. Do you think there is any chance, not that I'm saying there's a lot of players in Scotland would go for this, but given the fact that Jota has left, do you think there's a chance that any Saudi clubs will then come in for any of the Scottish players after our transfer window closes? Because that Saudi market is open for a long, long time.
Interesting. Possibly. I wouldn't be overly surprised, and I've been saying this. I was actually talking to our old friend Mr. Mark Wilson the other night, and he was talking about Harry Kane at Tottenham. If Harry Kane was to go to Tottenham, he made an interesting point. He says Kyogo to Tottenham. Could that be something that happens? I don't think Celtic will sell Kyogo and Jota in the same transfer window. I don't think you'll see another sale for Celtic. I think they will keep. I think keeping him's a masterstroke. Interesting question, Graeme. Has anybody else got an opinion on that?
I wouldn't be surprised, but I could think of some players that probably would go, or at least be considered. I don't know if they'd agree to it, but they'd definitely be considered. And especially with a certain manager that's over there that now I think we'll all know who I'm meaning. Mm-hmm. I can see him maybe swooping in for some of his fellow boys in blue.
You very well could. Jenna, I'll stick with you. Who you got for the player of the year?
I think it'll come down to between Kyogo and Tavernier. I think it just depends what one of those two win the league this year.
Interesting. Kian?
Yeah, it's boring, but Kyogo, he's an incredible player, so I reckon he does it again quite comfortably.
Won it last year. Lewis, who you got for player of the year?
Matt O'Reilly.
Oh, I said him last year, didn't I?
Yeah. I just have a feeling under Brendan Rodgers, he's going to elevate his game to another level. I really do. I think he fits into the system really nicely. He's been one of the standout players in pre-season. In my view, I thought he was excellent against Yokohama, one of the few. When I watched that match, and I just think his form dipped a bit at time last season. We saw that Aaron Moy got a chance, but he was coming on to a game again towards the end of the last season. I watched him down at Kilmarnock. He was excellent that day, and I just think fresh start under Rodgers this summer. I think Matt O'Reilly has the potential to really kind of kick on and really make a name for himself at Celtic. There's already been a lot of transfer talk around his future. I think a really big season is in store for him.
Interesting. Everybody knows how big a fan I am of Matt O'Reilly. I think I tipped Celtic to win the league, and I'm going to tip a Celtic player as a top goal scorer. I'm going to go with a Rangers player for player of the year. I think Nicholas Raskin could go to another level this year. I think I've already been really taken by him since he came in. I think he's got something that a lot of English sides will really, really like, that ability to control a midfield, but also that ability to bust. Some of his busting runs have been really, really impressive. I think he's a very young age. I wouldn't be surprised if Rangers make 15 million for him. What
about Cantwell?
I think the thing with Cantwell that worries me this season, I think he's going to play a bit deeper than he did last year. I think with the signing of Lammers, Seema coming in as well, he could play a bit deeper, and I don't think we'll see him to best effect. But I still think
he likes to affect games. That he's cut a bit of a frustrated figure. You can see that in the pre-season game so far.
I still think he'll be a big player for Rangers, but I think Raskin just offers a lot more in his position. I wouldn't be overly surprised if in games you might see Cantwell just playing as a number 8, whereas last season he was really thriving as a number 10. Remember the goal against Hearts, Graeme? Remember the Alan McGregor, the last game, Alan McGregor. Hearts got a late point. His goal that night.
Unfortunately, yes.
His goal that night was terrific. Like, I have not seen a Rangers midfielder do that in a long time. Just the way he breezed into the box and just made a terrific run. I think he's capable of that. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores 10 goals. If he's a 10-goal season, and he's probably one of the top assisters. But I think you might see him in a deeper position. I think Lammers could be the one that really kind of makes that number 10 role his own. I've been really impressed with him in pre-season. But I'm going to go with Nicholas Raskin for Player of the Year. Let's go to top goal scorer. Lewis, who you got?
Kian. I just think, obviously, he is the best finisher, one of the best players Kian mentioned and that we've seen in Scottish football for a long time. And I think he'll be hard to catch. I think Shankland has another great chance. Graeme, I think you've got a top player there, really do. It's been great to see his career progress the way it has, given he didn't really get a chance at Aberdeen. And I think he'll have another strong season. I think it'll be between those two, but I think Kyogo for me, just because he's playing for Celtic, really. I think it'll be another 20-plus season for him easily.
Kyogo for Lewis. Who have you got, Kian?
Well, I think it might just go hand in hand and be Kyogo, but I'd also give a shout out to Shankland. He loves a goal. He'll definitely be up there. But then I'd also expect Bojan Miovski to reach a level, because we were all impressed with his goals, but he can reach another level. He was still not towards the top three. I think at the end he had a bit of a spell not scoring. So I expect him, because Duke's more of like a creator. So I do expect Miovski to have a better goal scoring season, but I don't think he'll be close to the likes of Kyogo and Shankland, who are more scrappy finishers and love a goal.
Brilliant. Jenna, which Motherwell striker will be the top goal scorer?
John Buchan? No, joking. I wish. No, I think I hate to be all samey here, but again, Kyogo's the obvious choice. I think Shankland will be a close contender behind him, but I think in the end that Kyogo's just going to run away with it. Or score away with it, whatever you prefer.
Interesting. Graeme, Lawrence Shankland.
Well, depending on how many penalties Rangers get, Tavernier might be up there, but I think I'm going to have to go with Lawrence. I have to probably go for Kyogo. I mean, to be honest, his movement is unbelievable. Whenever I watch a Celtic Hearts game, I'm watching Kyogo, and his movement is just sensational. He plays on the shoulder. He's so quick. I would love to say Shankland, but I think the thing with Shankland is he's going to play deeper now.
Yeah,
I think Tagawa that we just signed will play up front. Mm-hmm. So I think Shankland will probably drop a bit deeper. I think he'll still score goals, and I think he will still get 20 plus. But I just think the fact he's playing a bit deeper might have more of an effect. So I do just think Kyogo, the way that he plays, I think he will probably be top scorer.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. Kyogo, I have spoke a lot about how much I love his IQ. It's not just his movement; it's his where to be. It's that knowing where to be, knowing he's a step ahead of where the pass is coming. I remember there's so many times where he just peels off a defender, creates himself a yard of space. A lot of his goals are 12 kind of in the penalty box, which you weren't really seeing a lot in his first season. But last season, he played a lot more as a striker, and I just thought you saw just how good he can be. I think Celtic fans, I said this last season, Lewis will remember, enjoy him while he's here. He's a top player. He's going to... I think also Brendan Rodgers. I wouldn't be overly surprised as well if you see maybe Maeda plays like a kind of false nine at times, particularly in Europe, and Kyogo comes into like a number 10 kind of thing, but I still think you'll see a massive impact player in Kyogo. I think Danilo will score a lot of goals for Rangers because I think he's a top penalty box striker. I think Rangers create a lot of chances. Graham's mentioning a point there about how many penalties Rangers get. James Tavernier is 25-1 to be top goal scorer. That's a few quid. There'll be a lot of people putting a fiver in that. James Tavernier's 25-1. I think Kyogo will be 32 goals last season. Look at the goals he scored last season. There's every type of goal, but the one thing that stood out to me is just how well he was in the penalty box, and I think he's on another level. I think he's far better. I think he's the best player in the league comfortably, just in terms of what he brings, his intelligence, knowing where to be. I just think Kyogo's the real deal, and I'm going to put him for Player of the Year. top goal scorer. I think if Celtic win the league, he'll be player of the year as well. Signing to watch. Now, I'm not going to just limit this to one. You can say as many as you want, really, because I think there's a lot of signings to take note of. Start with Jenna here. Who's your signing to watch?
I'd be completely biased for this one, but come back to this at the end of the season, you're going to say that I was right. I don't know if you want to count this because he was technically with us last season, but Dan Casey all the way for us.
Okay.
I think he's got the ability to be one of the best defenders that we've got. And obviously with the Old Firm and Hearts and Hibs and Aberdeen, see how the rest of us little guys, he'll be one of the best.
Interesting. Dan Casey, I know there's a few people on this podcast that are a big fan of him. Kian, who's your signings to watch?
Well, I've given Celtic the league, so I think I'm going to give Rangers a couple players. And not an obvious one. I think Abdallah Sima. I'm not even sure if he's been that impressive in pre-season, but he's another one of those players that have come from the Brighton scouting system. And I know it's just a loan, but he does really look like a powerful, fast player. He loves a header. It should really go align with how Rangers play. And then I'd also say Danilo. He looks like the perfect successor of, well, Morelos, basically. But yeah, he looks like a player that will come up with a lot of goals. And I'm really impressed with Rangers business. But I just, as I said earlier, I just think their defence might just let them down.
Interesting. Graeme, who's your signing to watch?
Well, I've got a few. You'll be pleased to know I've got a Rangers player in here. I think Cyril Dessers could be a really good signing. £5 million. I think he could be a really good player for Rangers. He could light up the league, to be honest. I think for me, again, for Hearts, I have to go with Tagawa. I think there's something about this lad. He's quick, scored a lot of goals in Japan and Portugal. This guy could be a really good signing. And again, I think one of the other ones I think would be a great signing for me is Scott Tiffany at Dundee. Really impressed with him at Partick Thistle last season. He was absolutely fantastic. I think he could be a great signing for Dundee. So that would be my three.
Interesting. Lewis, who you got?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I like Graham's shout there, Tiffany. I like Jenna's with Dan Casey. I like Leighton Clarkson as a player. I like Dylan Levitt Hibs. But the list is endless, really, here. I'll go. I think Dessers, as he touched on, I think he's a confidence player. If he can replicate the type of form that he showed when he was in Holland, a disappointing return with Cremonese last season, but he has the potential to really kick on. For me, Jose Cifuentes, this guy's been built up massively. Ecuadorian international, as we're all aware. This position is nailed on for him. We all know that. Jack and Lundstrom. Jack will probably move on next summer, and Lundstrom, in my opinion, I'd sell. I think Cifuentes watched a couple of games when he was at Los Angeles. Box-to-box midfielder. I like his attacking attributes. He's got a lot of different, a good range of skill set there. And I think he will partner Raskin to really strong effect this season, and I think he will be worth the wait for Rangers fans.
So you went for Cifuentes for Rangers. I've got about 5 or 6. Now I'm going to just I'm going to give everybody's team here a wee mention. I think the boy home at Celtic could be really good. He's really stood out to me in pre-season. He was hearing a bit about him in Norway as well. He's played 100 games and I think he's only 20. That's massive for me. Like having that level of experience. I think he could be one of those players who could help Callum McGregor as well. I think Callum McGregor might be able to kind of move forward a wee bit. I think you're going to see a lot of talent in that Celtic midfield. I've been impressed with every Celtic signing in pre-season. Like I think they've all with their strong points, but the boy home stood out to me. Rangers, I think Lammers is a technically super talent. Like I think he's really good. I think being that number 10 role, Sam Lammers. I also really like Danilo, as I said earlier. Hearts, I love the Tagawa signing, Graeme. Love it. I just think it's going into that Japanese market, which we've seen a lot in the past. Hearts, I'm sure Hearts have been in it already. It didn't work out, but Tagawa, goal scoring wise, I've looked at his stats. Maybe not the best record, but I think he'll get a lot of chances in that Hearts team. Could form a really good partnership with Shankland. Jenna, I really like the signing from Arsenal. I really like that young boy. I think he could be a real talent. Bireth, I think his name is. He could be really, really good. And Kian, I really like the promise. I've spoken to a fan of the Serbian club that Rubicic has come from. He said he's £2 million worth comfortably. That Aberdeen have got a bargain. So I would take that with a lot of confidence. And I think one thing Aberdeen did really well last season, you can criticise Jim Goodwin, but he made a few really good signings and he made a big impact. I think Rubicic is that kind of level as well. I think he could be really, really interesting. I think there's a lot of signings. I think every club has made at least one promising signing. Like, I don't think you can say that very often. But the one for me out of the whole league that I think could be really, really special is Danilo. I think the big money signing of the summer could be really, really talented. Let's move into the cups now. Obviously, Celtic blitzed these last year. Graeme, who do you think will win the Scottish Cup and League Cup?
Oh, do you know what? I'd love to say Hearts. I do actually think, I'm going to say this, right? I think Hearts will win the League Cup. For the first time in my lifetime, I think we'll win it. I think we've got a decent draw at the moment. We've got Partick Thistle. Although I said that last year, we got beat apart by Kilmarnock. But I think that's a decent draw. I think this could be our time to win the League Cup. I think Scottish Cup will probably be Celtics. Again, it all depends on who the draw is. You know, if the draw's County, you've got a chance. But I just have this sneaky feeling the Hearts have been in the League Cup final a couple of times and not won it. I think this is our time. I really hope it is. So I'm going to go Celtic to win the Scottish Cup and Hearts to finally win the League Cup.
Hearts winning a trophy. Jenna, who have you got to win the Scottish Cup and League Cup?
No double. No, I'm joking. I wish. I wish. No, I think, realistically speaking, I think the Rangers might get the League Cup.
Okay.
And then as a retaliation, Celtic will then go on, get the league title, and then the Scottish. However, I think it will just depend the draw. If Celtic or Rangers gets themselves quite early in the draws, I think it will change everything. Likes of maybe Hearts or Aberdeen might be in for a shout for it. But I think, as it stands now, I think it's got to be Rangers for the League Cup and then Celtic for the Scottish.
Interesting. Lewis, who have you got to win the Cups?
Agree with Jenna, but the other way around. I just think Rangers will take a wee bit of time to gel. I just think, you know, with that many signings, it's probably inevitable. And I think by the end of the season, they'll be flying. Hence, the Scottish Cup being next May, I think the timing will be right for them to go and win it. I think Celtic, obviously the kings of the League Cup for a good number of years now. It's been the Kyogo show in the League Cup, isn't it? So yeah, I think they'll be really tough to catch in the League Cup. However, when it comes to the Scottish, I think Celtic could get knocked out semis, quarters even this year. I feel like there could be. I don't think it'll be two Old Firm finals, put it that way.
Interesting. Kian, who's going to win the Cups?
Well, I went first for the League Cup, and I went for Rangers. I feel like they will be strong, and then maybe just towards the end fall off, and that's where Celtic go and win the league. And then Scottish Cup, I really want to say Aberdeen, just because I want to see Aberdeen win a trophy. I was there for the League Cup final in 2014 when I was like 12 years old, but now I do think it would probably be Celtic or Rangers, because I feel like both clubs are hungry not just to win one trophy. So and it'll be a very competitive season, and they'll be close together. And I don't really see a cup surprise this season, which normally there is, but it's probably a bit safe. But I'm going to go League Cup Rangers and then Scottish Cup Celtic.
So Lewis made a point there when he said that the League Cup has become a Celtic thing over the past few years. I remember back in the day it was a Rangers thing, and Rangers haven't won it in 12 years. And I think this is the season Rangers win it. I think you made a point there about Rangers gelling. I think Rangers will be really good at the start and could they sustain a league challenge. I wouldn't be surprised if Rangers win the League Cup and Celtic are the ones that spring towards the end of the season, because they've got the experience. I think the Brendan Rodgers factor as well, just the trophy gathering that he's done back in his time at Celtic. I wouldn't be surprised. Rangers win the League Cup. I think it gives the fans, I think it gives Beale as well a massive boost if they get a trophy early. So I would say Rangers to win the League Cup, and I think Celtic will win the Scottish Cup. Let's move into Championship, League 1, League 2. Lewis, I'll stay with you. Who you got? Championship, League One, League Two?
Championship, Ayr United.
Ooh.
Yep. Hugely impressed with them. Again, League Cup stage there. Came through that with flying colours. Liked the signings they made. Big blow losing Akinyemi, of course, this season, who's going to kind of step up to the mark. I like the Aidan McGeady idea, the technical director. I know he's it's an interesting one, that one, but there's still a player in there. I think he'll easily perform to high level in the Championship. And George Stanger, central defender, saw him a couple of times at Alloa. Very impressed with him. I think he's a good signing to solidify the defence. I have a feeling. I think they obviously just ran out of steam a bit towards the end of last season. I think Partick Thistle had a huge missed opportunity not getting up through the playoffs, and they've lost some key players as a result. I don't like the shape Dundee United are in at all. So Ayr United for me. League One, tentative vote for Falkirk now that there's no Dunfermline in the way. Jesus, it's hard to say that. I just think they've got enough experience in the ranks this time around. I know Hamilton, very young squad, Queen of the South, look very inconsistent. So tentative vote for Falkirk. And League Two, I'm going East Fife this year. Strike pairing of Nathan Austin, getting him in for Kelty, shrewd piece of business. And if he can team up with Scott Shepherd, who's bagged a fair amount of goals when he was at Edinburgh City, I think they could be a real force to be reckoned with. So East Fife in League Two.
Brilliant. Graeme, Championship, League One, League Two?
I've gone for Partick to win the league this season. I was really impressed on the last season. I know it was disappointing that they didn't come up last season. They were so close. And I think Lewis does make a good point. I think they have lost a few good players, but I do think, for me, I just have a feeling they're going to be really up for it this season. I think they will do really well. I'm really intrigued to see how United do this season because their League Cup was horrendous. I genuinely don't think Jim Goodwin will last till Christmas. That defeat by Spartans and the fans' reaction was hilarious. I think they could struggle this season. I really do. So for me, I think Partick will probably win it, but I'm intrigued to see how Dunfermline and Ayr do.
Brilliant. League One, League Two?
League One, I'm in with Lewis. I think Falkirk, I think they look quite strong. It could be a really tight division. Again, I'm intrigued to see how Kelty Hearts do. I think they've done okay, but I just think that Falkirk might have a bit too much.
And League Two?
I've gone for Dumbarton. I thought they were really good last season. I think they could do a really good job this season. I would like to see them come up. Again, I don't think there's much between a lot of the teams in there. I would like to see, because I'm a massive fan of Bonnyrigg, I'd like to see them do well, but I just think they might struggle again this season. But for me, I'm going Dumbarton to win the league.
Interesting. Kian, who have you got to win the Championship, League One and League Two?
Well, to start with the Championship, I am also impressed with Ayr in their group stage. I got the chance to see Ayr in person because I went to uni there the end of last season, and they're very impressive. Lee Bowen, I think, is a good manager, and I went for a bit of a surprise one because we all know, even with League One and League Two, but Scottish Championship, it could be front to bottom, it could be in reverse. So,
yeah.
And after watching Jim Goodwin, I can't back a Jim Goodwin side. I just can't do that. So I don't even think Dundee United will do that well. And then League One, I've gone with Falkirk. Yeah, I think everyone else is basically summed up by why Falkirk could go up, but I'll back Cove because they're local as well. And then League Two winners, I'm not too clued up on League Two, so I went with Spartans just because they beat Dundee United.
Interesting. Jenna, who do you think will win Championship, League One and League Two this season?
I'm feeling Partick Thistle, they just narrowly missed it. I think they'll be the outright winners. For who goes up potentially to the playoffs, I'm thinking maybe Dunfermline. I'm not going to lie, I'm stuck between them, and this is a bit of a sore point for me to say, and you'll probably laugh at this when I say it loud. I want to see Airdrie do it. I don't want them to do well, but I just want the derby back. I just want the derby. I want the real one. None of this diluted stuff we have with Zackies. If there's a chance the derby can come back properly and not at the expense of us going down, I'm always going to root for that.
Brilliant. Who you got for League One and League Two?
League One, going Falkirk. I think everyone's already explained that, so no point me going over it as well. But again, they were kind of like Partick Thistle. They were so close to doing it, and then just some results that then kind of tripped them up. But this time, they don't really have too much competition pushing for it overall. I think they'll knock out the park. League Two, I'm not going to lie, I've not been sure about this one. I said, you know what, I'll decide in the night once I've heard everyone's arguments, so I think I'll go with these five.
Each five, interesting. I get the Dundee United angle, but I still think they'll have too much. I think they'll just have enough to win it. I'm not impressed with them, don't get me wrong, but I just think they've got too much. I think they'll win it. They won't blow me away, but I think they'll just have enough to go over the line. With you all in Falkirk, I think Falkirk's time to come up is now. I think John McGlynn's first season was really good. Obviously got to the semi-final with the Cup. I think the League Challenge will be a lot better this season. I think not having Dunfermline in the league will help. I think
they need to win it to stay full time.
Yes, they certainly do, and I think they will. League Two, I love the business that Stenhousemuir have done. I think a lot of their signings have really caught my eye. I picked them last year and they just struggled a wee bit, but I think this season, I think they've signed a lot of players for the west of Scotland. I think the recruitment's been really smart. I think Gary Naismith's actually an underrated manager. If they keep Gary Naismith, I think they'll win League Two. So that's my pick for the lower leagues. Let's move into the sack race. Lewis, who is the first Premiership manager who's going to be at the job centre?
Steve McLean. And he'll be lucky if he gets another job on the back of it. Sorry, Stevie. But yeah, I just think I think the writing's on the wall for him. I really do. Even at this early stage, it's maybe harsh to say that, but yeah, I can't see him lasting much longer.
Interesting, Graeme.
I think it's between Lee Johnson, who buys his suits from Build-A-Bear, and Stephen McLean. But I think it's probably going to be Stephen McLean. I just think he looks. I agree with you, Scott. I wasn't impressed by the appointment in the first place. I think he's very inexperienced. He was a very good player, but I think as a manager, it's just a bit too much, and I don't think he's going to last very long. I think he might even be gone in the next few weeks, to be honest.
It could have been Lee Johnson tonight if they'd lost, but I think they're 6-0 up. So it shows you that Hibs are actually doing all right. Kian, who have you got?
Yeah, I've gone with Stephen McLean and or Lee Johnson. But if tonight's going so well, probably not Lee Johnson. But Stephen McLean's more of an obvious shout. Obviously, that cup group stage was terrible, and their squad is looking pretty bleak. I think, yeah, it could literally be within the first month of the season kicking off.
Jenna?
I'm going to have to go with Stephen. Honestly, I don't know why people haven't learned from Mallow. We went down the club legend route last year and look where that left us. Yeah, if they've maybe had some more managerial experience, maybe 5 years, lower leagues going up natural progression, fair enough. But when they're still very much in the junior of their career as a manager, it's not worth it.
I think Lee Johnson will get sacked very early on, but I think Stephen McLean will be lucky if he survives August. And I have a lot of time for Stephen McLean. I've heard a lot of good things about him speaking to people, but I just think it's a poison chalice, that job, now, especially in the back of such a heavy defeat. I think Stephen McLean will struggle this season, and I think St Johnstone you'll see very early on. Lewis made a good point about Tommy Wright. I wouldn't be surprised if they go for somebody like that just to try and secure their status. Like, I think I was surprised they went for Stephen McLean last season, actually, because I thought that's exactly they would go and get somebody who was like a Sam Allardyce type who would try and keep them in the league, and it kept them in the league, but I don't think he can take them forward.
They're bringing Craig O'Veen in. Telling you now, Craig O'Veen's
wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if it was somebody like that. Final question.
Bring him back.
Final question before we move on to, we're going to put everybody on the spot with a wee surprise at the end of the show. Scotland are in a really good position to qualify for Euro 2024. I have a funny feeling that this is an easy question for everybody. Ian, will Scotland qualify for Euro 2024?
Absolutely, and I would love to be there.
Lewis, will Scotland be going to Germany next summer?
Germany's already booked. We're there. Yeah, I think if we beat Cyprus, it's a 99% chance of us qualifying from the position we're in. I think at this stage, I'd like to see us go on and win the group. That'd be a tremendous achievement, given we've got Spain in there. Yes, we're there, and I'm there.
Interesting. Jenna, Scotland going to the Euros?
To quote the guy from the commentary, Scotland are through to Euro 2024, but still, you know what I'm saying.
Graeme, will you be going to Germany?
I have never been more confident about a prediction in my whole life, which means it's going to go wrong. But Scotland are there. Pack your bags, we're away to Germany.
Now, the reason I'm saying I'm not going to ask you where Scotland will finish is because I'm hoping that we're going to do an end-of-season show where we're going to recap all these predictions, and Scotland have qualified and we can predict it then. But yeah, I think I'll be amazed if Scotland don't qualify. It'd be a classic Scotland thing to do, to throw it away from that position, but I don't even think Scotland can do it. I think comfortably, I'll be very surprised if Scotland are at the Euros, and they still have, even if they were to throw it away, they'll get the playoffs. So I think they've got every possibility that I don't think there's any way that Scotland don't qualify for Euro 2024. So I think it's going to be very much a case of we'll see you all in Germany next summer. And it's going to be a very interesting season. But before we wrap up, I'm going to go round the panel. Lewis will maybe know what I'm talking about because we did this last year. And if I want to remind them of mine before we start this, we said last year a prediction for the season, that a wee shock prediction that you might see, you might surprise everybody for 2024. Do you remember mine last season, Lewis?
Top of my head, no. Tell me.
Celtic would qualify for the last 16 of the Champions League. That went well. I think was yours not that Van Bronckhorst and Postecoglou wouldn't be at Rangers Celtic this time next year?
That's right.
You got that one right there. Well done.
Yeah.
Right, I'll start with who I'll start with for this one. I'll start with Jenna. Put you in the spot. A wee shock prediction, because I'm going to write this down. We're going to put it up, and we'll see where we're at come May.
Motherwell semi-final of a cup.
Oh, Motherwell semi-final of a cup. Interesting. Graeme, my other prediction is Frankie McAvoy will outlast Stephen Naismith. Which
My prediction is by the end of the season, there will only be 2 managers in place now that will last the end of the season.
Name them.
Michael Beale and Brendan Rodgers.
Really?
I don't think any other
like that,
manager.
Do not jinx us.
I don't think any other manager will still be there by the end of May.
That could be a massive call, but wouldn't surprise me. We saw 7 lose their job this time last year. Kian, what's yours?
Aberdeen, round of 32, Europa League.
Oh,
It's not going to happen, but
That
maybe it's
could
going to
go,
go bold. I'd look smart when you do the next one at the end.
certainly could be. And Lewis Anderson, what is your prediction?
Hibernian to finish bottom 6.
I wish I'd just finished that on bottom.
I genuinely think they're going to struggle this season, and as we touched on earlier, I think teams like Motherwell could have a good season. I think they could be top 6. I think St Mirren are around that kind of mid-table mark as well, and I think both will finish above Hibs.
My prediction is Celtic will get more penalties than Rangers.
That'll never happen.
Wow.
That is my call for season 2023-2024. We're going to be with you all during the season for the new campaign. It's going to be very, very intriguing. And all that leaves me to do is wish everybody all the best with their predictions in the panel and thank them all for coming on. First of all, Lewis Anderson, pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks very much, Scott. Really good. Fingers crossed we've got a few of them right because last year was a shambles. So this time around, I'm feeling more confident.
Graeme Duthie, pleasure as always, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate. Loved it. Love listening to you, Lewis, Kian, and Jenna's predictions. Brilliant.
Jenna, thank you very much for coming on again. It's been a pleasure.
Happy to be here.
Brilliant. And Kian, brilliant first appearance, mate. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. You made it very easy for me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you very much to everyone that's tuned in. Please subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and as always, follow us on social media. Thank you very much.